What is up? This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough, vanguardne.ca. I am Norman James, along with my podcast partner in crime, the one and only Michael PTO. We are back in business. Michael, are you really there? Because I haven't heard from you in a long time.
Good morning, Norman. No, I've been gallivanting all over the Northeast, if not up to Toronto for an ELO concert, which was almost a religious experience, going to New York to see the Yankees play. So it's been a busy few weeks, but back on the hockey beat, and obviously there's always news in Leafland.
Yeah, I saw some pictures put out by Simon Dingley of the CBC of that ELO concert. It looked pretty amazing. Is that Jeff Flynn?
Yes, Jeff Lynne. It was fantastic. I mean, I didn't have any kind of expectation because most of the acts that I see that are sort of, acts from my childhood, most of them don't live up to the billing, or the singer can't sing anymore, or they're doing it for a paycheck. You could see, it was a great band. It was a great night, 17,000 fans at Scotiabank Arena. And it was like you were back in 1977. He was in good voice, and it was a great show.
Why is it I think of this guy only as a traveling Wilbury?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is and his opening act was George Harrison's son, Danny, and he did they did Handle with Care, the Wilbury song. So it was, it was great. When you have a band with George Harrison, Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, and Jeff Lynne, it tends to attract attention.
One of the great bands of all time. I get goosebumps even thinking about those guys. No Sarah McLachlan, but the Leafs with no Montreal Canadiens. But that's
next week. That's next week.
Oh, really?
Next week. Yes.
Where's that at?
Lewiston Art Park, Sarah McLachlan with the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra, and I'll be probably front row.
You're kidding me.
No.
Geez, this is the summer of Augello. It's just all working out in spades for you. You were at the Yankee game. You're, gallivanting across the globe in your camper. I mean, it's working out pretty well for Mr. A.
Yes. Let's talk some hockey.
No, you're right. So, PTOs, Michael Neuvirth. Goodbye, Garrett Sparks. Hello, Mr. Neuvirth. Once a number one in Washington. I know him from his OHL days, Plymouth, Windsor. I don't know if that matters much, but 6 degrees of the O. I mean, if this guy stays healthy, can he stay healthy for, I don't know, 15 to 20 games, please, and back up Freddie Anderson and help this team get to where it needs to get to, wherever that is?
Well, that's the big question, and that's why. And at first, he's a good veteran goaltender, but injuries have really killed him the last couple of years. 2 years ago, he played 22 games. Last year, only played 7. There were 8 goaltenders in Philadelphia. It was a disastrous season for them in net. He's practicing right now with the Czech national team in the Czech Republic. He apparently had interest from a number of teams. Chose the Leafs. Referred to the Leafs as the Real Madrid of hockey. So that, he clearly is excited. Now, it's a PTO. He's going to have to prove that he can stay healthy. It was groin problems mostly in Philadelphia, which is the bane of the existence of most goalies. We remember, J.S. Shiger back in his day, and it was, groin problems late in his career that really affected his ability to play. But I think what you said is right. It spells, if not, the end of Garrett Sparks, the likely end of him. I don't think, with Michael Hutchinson in place, now with Neuvirth as a potential signing, that it's likely that Sparks even makes it to training camp. I think they could trade him before September 13th or 14th when training camp opens, because I don't think he has a chance to make the team with Mike Babcock as coach. I think Mike Babcock has made up his mind, like he did with Jonas Enroth a few years ago, that this guy is not an NHL backup. I can't depend on him. And they need to play Freddie Anderson less during the regular season, maybe say 55 games, and have him more fresher when it comes to the playoffs. And if that means both Neuvirth and Hutchinson, then that may be the case. Have them rotate, or have one and then one called up from the minors. I mean, I think they need a backup goalie to play close to 30 games. That seems to be the model that most general managers and coaches are following now. And the Leafs, I think, needed another veteran backup, even as a buffer between those young guys that they have, Joseph Wall and Ian Scott. They cannot have those kids playing in the NHL this year.
This is the Leafs Convo for Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough. VanguardNE.ca. The Leafs team, to me, today seems more complete than the team that left the ice in Boston this past spring. That doesn't mean the team is complete in its assembly of becoming what we want it to be. However, steps. Would you agree with that, Mike?
Yes. I mean, when you look at this team as it's currently constructed, it has a top four blue line. It didn't, at least in terms of talent level, when they were last together in that first round series against Boston. People may argue, but I'm sorry that, Jake Gardiner was limited by injury, but he was a bottom pairing guy in the playoffs because of that. But even when he was playing 23, 24 minutes a night and being depended on heavily by Mike Babcock defensively, he was not a top four defenseman. Now you have, and then this is, this could change in terms of the combos, but you're probably looking at Jake Muzzin and Tyson Barrie on one pairing and Morgan Riley and Cody Ceci on the other. That's a legitimate top four. Now, is it the best in the league? No, but it's markedly improved from what they had last year. And that's the whole point. Now, I think you have a top four unit that can be effective, and that is a complete difference from what they had last year. And I really think they did that at minimal cost, because they lose Kadri and a couple other players, but they bring in Kerfoot, and he's a third line center. So I think, they're just as good as they were, and maybe even better.
There's not a lot of rhetoric being echoed and amplified from Camp Marner, especially over the last little while. Is this quiet, dare I say calm, good in terms of the eventual outcome of a pact between the Leafs and Marner?
I mean, Marner had a charity event last week in Toronto, and did some media and did his best not to say anything, but then made a bit of news by saying, more than likely, if he doesn't have a contract, he's not going to be at training camp, which isn't exactly a, bulletin. I mean, we know you're not going out there and risking getting injured playing in training camp. You have to be under contract. So, I mean, that's not any sort of great revelation, but it just puts things in perspective. He didn't say anything pro in terms of, wanting to stay in his hometown. I think he just didn't want to undercut the leverage that his representation has with the Leafs, and just referred most of everything to, the charity event and back to his representatives. I get that. That's all sort of boilerplate that, most players do that. But it's funny because Larry Brooks wrote a piece in the New York Post on Sunday talking about the futility of offer sheets, referring back to, the 90s when Neil Smith, who we interviewed, was the general manager of the New York Rangers, and offer sheeted Joe Sakic, which was matched by the Colorado Avalanche, and the ownership of the Rangers wanted him to go out and offer sheet a guy like Paul Kariya, and Smith essentially said, I'm not going to do it because I'm making myself and I'm making our team the pariah of the NHL by doing this, because nobody's, they're always going to match, unless the contract is ridiculous. And I think we've seen all over most of this last month, when we've heard these rumors about Columbus or the Islanders or these other teams being interested in offer sheets. It's not, if they're going to risk 4 first-round picks, they're going to want 7 years of Marner, and Marner's camp clearly wants something shorter. Now, the one cautionary tale that Brooks had in this piece was that, a team like the Islanders, if they truly want Marner and they truly wanted to put the Leafs in a corner, would wait until the end of September, when they don't have the extra 10% of the summer salary cap. That they would have to get under the $81.5 million, which is the cap ceiling, and if they can't fit him under the cap, then they would have to trade players to make that room or just not match the offer. If that's the tactic of the Marner camp, which I don't think it is, I think, again, I still think he wants to play in Toronto and he wants to get the most money out of Toronto. Yeah, that's sort of the poison pill there. If they go down that road, then it's Paul Marner and Darren Ferris looking, not for the best future of their player, but of the getting the most dollars. And I don't think that they're going down that road. But if they do that, then the Leafs may have to be proactive and set a deadline before that comes to be. Maybe training camp, saying we want you in training camp. If this deal is not done by training camp, then we're going to move on. But I think at some point there's going to be a deadline where they say, we need to get this done. If you don't want to get this done, they can't go into the regular season, Norm. They can't do that with Marner, especially since, if you remember, Nylander's contract, there was that front-loaded first year. They had the cap room last year to do that. They don't this year. If they have to do that, then they probably would have to trade somebody to clear the space.
Marner wants to be a Maple Leaf. Paul Marner's effect as a overbearing, petulant hockey parent isn't going to play to as high a degree anywhere else but Toronto. Mm-hmm. These guys need to be in Toronto. What the hell are they waiting for the Maple Leafs to do to get, what are they waiting for, Mike? What do they expect where do they expect the Maple Leafs to get to before they finally say, all right, enough playing games, enough posturing, enough being assholes. Let's just get this deal done.
I think they're waiting for the Leafs to pony up money in the neighborhood of Tavares and Matthews. And I mean, I get it. I understand it. Marner's led the team in scoring the last 2 years. That
were they 2 60-plus point seasons, Mike?
No. I believe it was
60-plus point seasons, back to back.
It was 69 and 94, I believe, with the numbers. So yeah, no, it's better than that. And and I know that everybody is waiting, setting their watch to the William Nylander comment. But if it's a choice that the Leafs have to make between signing Marner and trading William Nylander, or potentially squeezing a bridge deal out of Mitch Marner for the sake of keeping William Nylander, I would take the 7 years of Mitch Marner and trade Nylander for young assets. But I don't think that that's where the organization is. Is that likely? Probably not. But that's the battle. The battle here is because I don't see them trading a Kapanen or a Janssen or trading any of the defensemen. There's no other place to really open up space other than trading William Nylander, because there are players who could replace him within the organization, like Jeremy Bracco. I'm not saying that he'll be as good, but he could be down the line. But that's the flexibility that they have, but it's not much, and they just need to get the Marner situation resolved as quickly as possible.
Anybody who is in Nylander's way needs to get out of the way, because Nylander's coming. Anybody who's coming up to take Nylander's place isn't allowed to, because it's all about Nylander. I get it. 6.9 AAV is actually pretty good, and in a business sense, that contract was set up in order to allow, at least on paper, conceptually, the Maple Leafs to bring in a Mitch Marner for however many more millions of dollars per year he would deserve over Nylander. However, Camp Marner's just gone mad. And I'm telling you right now, these guys think they're smart. They're dumb. They're dumb. And in a small way, I hope they ruin this kid's career, because it's going to look good on them. And I say that, I only say that in jest. I say that because I'm a little frustrated. I love Marner. I want him to play on this team. If it works out with Nylander too, great. But in a small way, sometimes you want to see these guys reap what they sow and earn the punishment they deserve for being a bunch of jerks. And if that punishment is Mitch Marner getting money somewhere else and turning into kind of a transient, nomadic player who's done well here, done well there, never really been able to find a home after having one in Toronto, then F you guys. That's what you deserve.
In the end, though, Norm, I think that where it's going to end up, because from everything that I've learned, the Marner camp is amenable to a shorter term bridge deal. Anything that gets them closer to UFA, to him at I believe he would be 20, let's see, 25
I know.
as a UFA. Anything 25 or 26. Anything that gets them closer to that, they would be in for, which means a 2-year or a 3-year bridge. If it's a 3-year, he's one arbitration year away from being a UFA. The Leafs want the long term. They want
Sure.
the security. The Leaf,
but Mike, they got long term from Tavares, long term from Matthews, long term from Nylander. Like a lot of this was done to set the table for getting Marner into a long-term situation at an agreeable number, a big number, but not an exorbitant number, not a ridiculous number. And that's where these damn representatives want to take it. Like, damn, Mitch, why don't you turn around and give both of these guys the finger and say, sign where I want to sign. That's Toronto. Let's get this damn thing done. But you know what?
well,
The dad and the agent know better. Because the dad and the agent for Nylander knew better too. Because Mr. 60+ point season is going to come back and rip it up, and the guy basically wasted a year and got paid $10 million. So
if it can't go past October 1st, like I said, for the reasons that I mentioned, but there's also another factor here. And again, I mean, I think people think that I have William Nylander on the brain, but if you look at the cap structure of this team and the fact that the cap is not going to go up significantly next year, maybe in 2 years, it is a factor. Next year, after this year, in the summer, Muzzin, Barry, Ceci are all UFA.
mm-hmm.
Travis Dermott is restricted. And if this team plays well and this defense is good, obviously they're going to want to keep Tyson Barrie. They're going to probably want to keep Jake Muzzin. They probably will walk from Ceci unless he has a renaissance in Toronto. But you're talking about somebody in Muzzin who's making $4 million a year. He's probably going to want to raise. You're talking about Tyson Barrie, who is rumored to want close to $8 million a year. Where is that room coming?
Mm-hmm.
It's 11. You're probably not going to be able to do it. And if Marner gets less, then it's still going to take probably clearing the Nylander salary and getting young assets to be able to sign those defensemen. So it's all a question of what are your priorities. And if this team has a good year next year and that defense leads them to closer to the promised land or even the Stanley Cup, then Kyle Dubas is going to have to make hard decisions when it comes to where money is being allocated.
John King on Twitter, Leaf Brew, I like the name, asks, are there any other moves you'd like to see Dubas make if he was not handcuffed by Marner right now?
There are a couple of veteran defensemen still out there that I think would help on the bottom pairing. I mean, the one concern I have is that they had traded or let go their top penalty-killing pairing of Hainsey and Zaitsev. Right now, probably your penalty-killing pairing is Jake Muzzin and Cody Ceci. I think that can be improved. The guys like Dan Girardi is the one I sort of focused on. I look at the Leafs defense right now, and I see that bottom pairing that's, I think, a little scary. Travis Dermott will be out until November. You've got such luminaries as Martin Marincin and Kevin Goodell. Ben Harper. I mean, it's a hodgepodge of mediocrity, and that I think they can get away with that in the early months because it's the way that the league plays in the first couple months is always different. But a guy like Dan Girardi is still out there as a UFA. Probably won't cost a ton. 35 years old. The Leafs penalty killing pairing was Zaitsev and Hainsey last year. They're both gone. More than likely right now, Muzzin and Ceci are their top defensive pairing. But then you have guys like Tyson Barrie and Morgan Riley killing penalties. I don't think they want that. So I think they need a veteran guy who can clear the front of the net and play effectively on a bottom pairing. I think, Girardi, maybe a Ben Lovejoy. I wouldn't go so far as saying, let's bring back Dion, but he's still out there as well. I mean, there are a number of veteran guys that I think would be a good add and probably wouldn't cost a lot. So I hope that Dubas goes that way.
Real quick, Frank DeAndrea at Frank TML wants to know why Jake Gardiner isn't signed yet by anyone.
from what I understand, he has offers. He's mulling them over. None of them are with Toronto. So he's not coming back. It's not happening. So, you can
What?
do away with that neck brace that you used when you saw defender or saw forwards going
Well,
by Jake Gardiner.
I'm told by the data heads that it's not even close. Jake Gardiner was light years ahead of Morgan Riley in terms of being an effective overall defenseman. I mean, he was unbelievable. 51 was one of the probably the greatest defenseman in the history of the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, and pigs fly. So
what?
It's not he. I think what'll end up happening is he's probably going to end up signing a shorter term deal than a lot of people thought. Apparently the back is not a problem, but it's the fact that I think other teams in this league recognize that he's a one-way player and don't want to sign a guy like that for 6 or 7 years. So he's probably going to end up with a 2 or 3 year deal someplace. And like I said, I hope it's in the Atlantic Division so the Leafs can benefit from it.
He is one of the great defensemen in the league, and I've reconciled with number 51. So I'm on Team Jake as long as that team does not wear the blue and white. We're going to go real quick here, but DJ Olenek, my Russian brother from another mother, wants to know why the Leafs haven't signed defenseman V. Putin yet.
His signing bonus would be sort of heavy, so I don't think they're going to go that
and you wouldn't want
direction.
to be paired with that guy either, because if you made a mistake, you know where you're going. And what about Nikita Gusev?
Gusev is property of the Vegas Golden Knights. They're looking to trade him. He's looking to come over from the KHL. He apparently his salary demand is in the $4 million range, which eliminates him from any possibility of coming to Toronto because they simply can't afford it. So I don't think Gusev is on the radar for the Leafs at all.
So what are you going to be able to afford when you're in the Hamptons over the next month? A Lamborghini, a champagne. Lifestyles of the Jellos and Famous.
Yeah, no, it'll be more like a Ford Festiva or something like that.
It's a Fiesta. Ford Fiesta, buddy. I've got one on the B lot back at Oak Ridge Ford for just under $4,000. I can get you into it for $7,000.
Great. Nice markup there.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.
We would like to thank Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough, title sponsor of the Leafs Convo, demonstrating passion for the industry and a superior level of excellence in selling, leasing, and marketing your property. Vanguard Northeast Realty.